So what did we do in the previous lessons and what are we doing today? So if I could ask you to hit mute all there, level, just so we can make sure and then we'll go from there. So lesson 1 was grade 9 and 10 tools.
Mr. Is, can you please unmute yourself?
Yeah, all good. So grade 9 and 10 tools, and that was basically SOHCAHTOA and using just right angle triangles. So that was basically recapping grade 9 and 10. Lesson 2 was definitely grade 11, and it was what we called the area rule. And basically we found how to find the area of any type of triangle. And so that was the last lesson. Lesson 3, or today, is going to be using, it's also obviously based on grade 11, and it's going to be learning something called the sine rule. And we're going to use the sine rule to find the sides of triangles. Now, if we go, depending on how time goes, we might also learn a little bit today about how to use the sine rule to find angles, but most likely the next lesson will be about that. So I just want to ask a question. How many of you have encountered the sine rule before, or maybe you've just started doing it at school? And if you have, give a thumbs up. And if you have never heard of the sine rule, give a thumbs down. So I just want to give, so I think most students should be sort of starting the sine rule at school now, according to the curriculum. Okay, some students haven't, and that's fine. And we're going to assume that you haven't started, but I just wanted to get a feel. Okay, cool. So if we talk about the sine rule is a tool in our toolkit, okay, that we use, and it's useful because it works for all types of triangles, right? So if we look at, I'm going to do an example with you to start the lesson today. And I want to ask you, do you see, well, in fact, I won't even ask you that. If you look at this triangle, you'll notice that it doesn't have a right angle, okay? And because there's no right angle, if I ask you to find one of the sides, say, for example, I want you to find the side A, you don't really have a way of doing that unless you know how to use the sine rule or the rule of sines. And so that's what I'm going to show you initially. Now, I'm not going to go into the proof today because the focus of the lesson is on really just how to use the sine rule. But the way the sine rule works is it basically works by using trigonometry to find the height of the triangle. And they're using the triangle on this side initially, and then finding the height of this triangle, and then basically just sticking them together. So that's the magic of why it works. But I will go into that in a later lesson. Today, what I want to do is I just want to show you how do we use this thing. Okay, so the way it works is you write down the side that you want to know. And in this case, that is side A. And then you write down the sine of the angle that is opposite that A. So 64. Now, if I stopped at that point, so Katlego, this is paper 2, yes. And if we look at this whole module, it's about learning tools to find the sides of triangles and tools to find angles in triangles. And so today we're learning one of these new tools. Okay, so the second part of the sine rule is we look for a pair of sides and angles that opposite each other. And I see that there's a 13 down here. And so what I do is I write the sides on top, and then below it, I write the sine of the angle opposite that. Now, what's opposite 13? It's 41. And so we write the sine of 41. Now, this feels a little bit like magic. Okay, but again, there's a very logical reason it works out. But today we're just focusing on the tool, the process. How do we make it work? And how do we use it consistently? So to find the A now, the problem is this sine of 64 down here. I need to get rid of it. And so what I do is I multiply both sides by the sine of 64. If I do that, I'm left with an a by itself. On this side, I'm left with still the sine of 41 that was there. And then I just multiply by the sine of 64. And basically all that's happened is that this has been moved to that side, or we would say I've multiplied both sides by the sine of 64, and this is cancelled. Okay, so what's my final answer then? Well, my final answer is just going to be 13 divided by the sine of 41, I'll get an equals there, times by the sine of 64, and we should get 17.8. And the more common way to write this is to write this actually as 13 sine 64 over the sine of 41. And so you'd normally key it into your calculator as 13 times the sine of 64 divided by the sine of 41. And you should get the answer 17.8. Yeah. Okay, so that is how you use the sine rule. And what I'm going to ask you to do now is I'm going to ask you to try and do one yourself. Before I do that, I just want to check the basic idea makes sense. So thumbs up if it does make sense, the basic idea, and thumbs down if it doesn't, if I need to do another example before you try. Okay. So it's kind of what I'm going to do is I'm going to let you do this one, but I'm going to take questions from students, and for those who are feeling confused, because it's about half-half at the moment. So take a screenshot now if you have to. And then what I want you to do is I want you to try and find, actually, let's not do that one. Let's do this one. I want you to try and find for me the length, basically the length of this side over here. We're going to call it E. And for those students who are feeling comfortable, I want you to go ahead and do that. But for those who need another example, what I'm going to suggest is that you, I wonder. Okay, we're in between. Okay, how about this, guys? I'm going to give you a hint for this one. I'm going to go halfway. You start by writing E divided by the sine of 67. So that's going to start you off. Now, I want you to see, can you fill out the two spots over here? Do you know what's missing over here? Let's do it like that. So tell me what should be in the first block above here. We'll call this block 1. And what's going to be in this block over here, block 2. And remember, I'm trying to use the sine rule to find the length E. So maybe pop that in the chat. So I see Musa has given, and a couple of you have. You're going to put 7 over here, and then below that, you're going to put the sine of 54, because this bit over here matches that pair over there. Now, what is the value of E going to be? That is the final answer that I'm looking for. And we need to remember here that it's the sine of 67 that I need to deal with. So we should get, if I multiply both sides by the sine of 67, I get 7 sine 67 over sine 54. And so basically this 67 has just been brought across from the other side, and that's why it's there. And if I key this into my calculator, you do indeed get 7.96 units for that. So basically what you've worked out is you've worked out that this one over here, sorry, is 7.96. Now, guys, that actually makes me, I know that I'm on the right path, because one of the things about a triangle is the biggest side is always opposite the biggest angle. And I could see that 67 is the biggest angle. And so the fact that my E is greater than 7 makes me kind of feel good that I'm on the right track. Okay, let's do a slightly harder one. So take a screenshot if you need to. And then I want you to try and find for me the length of which of these sides should I ask you to find? I want you to find for me A. So this is a bit harder. I want you to use the sine rule to find A, and then some of you will get a bit stuck, but just do the best you can, okay? And think about what we've done so far. How do we structure our use of the sine rule? So over to you guys. And maybe some of you will notice something about this question that's very helpful. What's missing? What would be so nice to have? And maybe we could work it out. Or maybe someone can give us a hint. Maybe someone's looking at this and going, I've got this. There's a little hint you need to get. David, I see you've raised your hand. I'm going to unmute you.
Sir?
Yes.
Aren't we not gonna say 180 minus 71 minus 42 degrees?
Yeah, David, that's exactly the hint we needed. We need to find angle C, and to do that, we need to go minus 71 minus 42. And what do you get for that? Did you get 67, David?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So why did you solve for that angle? What was your thinking? Okay. I think I've lost you there, David. So basically the reason you need it is you need the angle that is opposite the 15. And so when you write out the sine rule, you start by writing out the side you're looking for, which is A, over the sine of 71. And that's going to be equal to 15 over the sine of 67. And so that's why we needed David's hint to help us get to that 67. Now, the final step is going to be getting this A by itself, which I'm still waiting for answers to come through from the class. But it feels now like the hardest part of this question is done. Okay, I see a couple of answers coming through. I think we're now going to get, for my final answer, I multiply both sides by sine 71, and I'm going to get 15 sine 71 over sine 67. And what we are going to get is 15.41 units. Okay, so you guys are getting better and better at using the tool. And so let's do another one. And if you need to take a screenshot, take a screenshot. And then I'm going to move on. Okay, so let's do something a little different. Can you look at this question and tell me which of the 4 options would be the correct equation based on the diagram on the right. Now, notice there are no 90-degree angles in sight, and so we cannot use SOHCAHTOA here. There's no opportunity to use SOHCAHTOA. We are just using the sine rule. And we're looking to find the value of this side over here. Which of the 4 options is the correct use of the sine rule? Okay, I'll give a little bit more time. We seem to be heading towards one particular option. So whenever I use the sine rule, I ask, what am I looking for? It's x. And I go sine 54. Now, is there a pair of a side and an angle? I think these two are involved. And so I would get, I put the side on top, 12 over the sine of 102. Now, is there anything that looks like that? X over the sine of 54, sine 12 over the sine of 102. I see that from the class, everyone seems to be getting C, and that is looking good. Okay. If there is a question, guys, won't you raise your hand? But I'm getting the impression that the basic mechanics of the sine rule are looking good for you. Okay. Okay, let's do another one like this, but a bit harder. You are given the equation in the block. You are given that. Which of the 4 options is the next step when solving the, basically solving for a side using the sine rule? So you're given the thing in the red block. Which of those 4 options, and it looks a bit, you have to look carefully, which of those 4 look like useful to you? Think about what that final step is going to be. I think the sine of 54, we have to deal with the sine of 54 in order to basically deal with this question. So I think that when I bring it across to the other side, basically this sine of 54 is going to reappear over here. Which of the 4 options look the same? Well, there's nothing that looks exactly like that, but this also means the same as times by the sine of 54. So basically I times both sides by that. And to me, it looks like it has to be C, because I see my sine of 54 and then 12 over sine of 102, which is what I had there. Okay, which is option C.
Mr. Ace?
Fantastic. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I got kicked out. Can you please make me co-host again?
I can indeed. So
Sorry about that.
that's fine. Let me just find you on the chat. I'll make you a co-host. Okay. I feel like we need to kick it up a little bit. So actually, no, we'll do one more like this. Let's see how it goes. Which is the following is a correct statement based on the diagram? Let's just do one more before I start going quicker. So you're given that, and your goal is to find the side P. Now, which of the 4 options looks correct to you guys? Okay, clearly we have ICC. So why is it C? Because P divided by the sine of 32 will be equal to 21 over the sine of 95, which is C. Okay, cool. All good, all good. Let's see if we get, what are we looking for now? Let's BC, no, that's too easy. Okay, let's do this one. And I am not going to say too much on this one. You are going to find me the length of X. And if students would like to have a conversation, I want you to raise your hand, but otherwise I think you're ready to fly solo. So I'm giving you a triangle with two angles and a side, and that's all I've given you. And you need to find me the unknown side. So where would we start? Okay. No, ma'am is here. Don't worry. We're all good. So I think one of the main things that I'm getting stuck on is I get that X is partnered with 46, but there's no partner for 20. And so what you need to do is you need to work out what that angle is. But I remember from what David told me earlier in the lesson, I can find the missing angle by going 180 minus 40 minus 46. And I should write a reason. And so I should get 94 degrees for my missing angle here. Now, if I've got that angle, then I'm going to start by writing the X, which I don't know, but I want to know, over the sine of 46. And then I'm going to use the 20 over here over the sine of 94. And so the only final step I need to worry about is how do I get this across to the other side? And when I do that, I multiply both sides by the sine of 46, and I'm going to get 20 times the sine of 46 over the sine of 94. And so let's just confirm that the answer that everyone is getting is the same as mine. So I get 14.42. And what can happen, everyone, is if you key this into your calculator in the wrong way, it can be a problem. So what I encourage you to do, probably the best way to do this, is to put this in your calculator first and then get an answer, then divide by this, or just make sure that, make sure that you basically find a method that you're consistently getting the same answer as the right one that we're getting. All right. Are there any questions from the class? So guys, I just want to get a sense of, in terms of the speed we're going, if you feel like you understand it, give us a thumbs up. And if you feel like I'm going too fast or I'm losing you, give a thumbs down. But I just want to get a feel for the group. Okay. Let's keep those votes coming. And also, take a screenshot now if you need to. Awesome. Okay. Well, then let us go on to one more question before the break. Let me find something that's a little bit more exciting for you. Okay, ignore the, actually, no, this is not going to be too exciting, but let's just check if you get it right. So ignore the 3SF part. That's just called significant figures, but we don't really deal with that in our syllabus. I want you to find the length of X, and then I want you to find the correct option below, A, B, C, or D. Which of those options is going to be correct? Over to you guys. I want you to find that length X. And the fact that there's not a 90-degree angle in sight does not scare you now because you know the power of the sine rule. Let's see what you can do. Let's have a look. So we want this x. So it's x over the sine of 120. Now we have to use the 12.1 because we don't have this side over here. Now, if we want that, what we're going to do is we are going to go 12.1 divided by the sine of 35. Make sure I've got that right. Yes. And so then in order to get my final answer, I need to move the sine of 120 across, and I'm going to get 12.1 times the sine of 120 over the sine of 35. Sine of 120. And you should get, oh wait. Then divided by the sine of 35. I get 18.267, or basically 18.3. However, what is a bit sneaky is that there are two 18.3s. So which of these two should you choose? And the reason you have to choose B is that this is a length. So the one with meters squared is an area. And so you would ignore the D. It's not meters squared, it's a length. And so it will just be pure old meters, which is B. Okay, and if I look at the chat, it looks pretty good to me, guys. It looks pretty good to me. So it is time for a stretching break. And I want to ask you all to please stand up on your feet. And I want to see you stretching in whatever stretching pose makes you shine brightest. And I'm going to ask Lebo to help us to keep an eye on the students who are shining brightest. If you guys could turn your cameras on, I would love to see you stretching. We'd love to see each other. And let's just stretch it out for a second.
Come on, guys, join in on the stretch.
Think of it as an investment in your future. It's an investment in your future in the next half an hour. Your body will love you for it. Lesejo, let's see you on camera. Joel, let's see you guys. Oh, I heard some clicks. Oh, lots of clicks.
I hope you guys are stretching even though your cameras are off.
Come on, guys. We want to see your lovely faces.
Oh, Joel says he doesn't have a camera on his desktop.
Okay, well, that's a good excuse.
We'll forgive you, Joel.
Andile, we want to feel like we're one big happy family. Okay, guys, so I feel much better. I hope that you had the stretching experience that I had, because I feel like I am ready to roll for the second half of the lesson. Okay, let's do a fun little brain break. So here is my challenge to you. I want to know, what is a kitten plus a lion plus a chicken?
Mr.
Over
S,
to
can you
you.
please drop down your camera?
Aha. How's that?
It's perfect.
Awesome. Okay. I feel like we have to, okay, Loretta's on it. I'm not going to give hints along the way today. I want to see what's the final answer. Be careful about the second line. It's a bit trickier than it looks. So I think I see in the chat, everybody is saying that the kitten is 20, which I agree with. But now ask yourself, if this was an equation you added to both sides, you get 64 on this side, and you'd have 2 lions on this side. Oh, my nose is getting blocked again. So ask yourself, what does a little lion have to be then? Okay, so it's not, think about this. So if you add, this little kitten is 20, if you add 20 to both sides, you end up with 2 lions is 64. So I think 1 lion is 32. Does anybody agree with me? A lion is 32? Because think about it. If you go 32 plus 32, you get 64. 64 minus 20 is 44. So yeah, this is going to be 32. So what's the final answer? I see a couple of students are venturing a guess. I think the first one was Lorraine, from what I can see, or who was. So if that's 32, a little chicken is going to be 2. And so the final answer is going to be 20 plus 32, which is 52. Oh, I get something different, yeah. Who's got the final answer? The chicken can't be 2. Oh, you're right. I'm being a bit silly. The chicken has to be 30, which means that we have 20 plus 32 plus 30. And so what's my final answer? It is going to be 82. Well done, everyone. That was a little bit harder today. Okay, so that was 82. Well done. And I think the first person to get it today was Impo. Well done, Impo. And Oretile wasn't too far behind you. Okay, give me a thumbs up if you're ready for the second part of the lesson. Okay, let's rock and roll. So let's go to another multiple choice question. I'm giving you a triangle, and I want you to find an expression for the length of side B. Can you find me the length of side B, or which option corresponds to the length of side B? Ask yourself, how do you start this process? And then which option looks similar? Oh, that's too big. So we have B divided by the sine of 56 is equal to 5 over the sine of 80. And so then we're basically going to move this sine of 56 across. And so you should see an option where B is 5 times the sine of 56 over the sine of 80. And you guys are saying that it's option B, and I agree with you. Okay, so it feels like you've got this. I need to actually take it up a notch in terms of testing your understanding. You've got the mechanics of how the sine rule is used in practice, which is well done. I mean, it only took you guys just under half an hour. So that is great news for all of us. Let's look for a question that will challenge us a little bit. Actually, this isn't quite going to challenge us yet, but let's just check you get it right, just to make sure that your calculator typing in is good. So you're given the following expression, and I just want to make sure that you guys all get the same answer from the list below of A, B, C, and D. And this is just to check that you're using your calculator correctly. And so you should get be getting option D. Now, if you're not getting option D, it means that the way you're keying into your calculator is a little bit dodgy. And so what this really means is basically the sine 20 and 5, they are being multiplied together. You can always think of it as like this is over 1 if you want, but essentially the top line in yellow is being multiplied, and then you divide by the sine of 40. And that's kind of happen from time to time. That mistake happens with students. Okay. I feel like you've got this one. So we've got all those ones. Let's go to something a bit more tricky. Here we go. I want you to try and find the correct option of these four. So you're given a triangle and you need to pick which of these options corresponds to the drawing over here. And I suspect that this angle over here will be quite helpful. So if we find angle B, we get 180 minus 75 minus 65. And that is going to be 40. And so when we write this out, we should get x over the sine of 65 equals 8 over the sine of 40. And is there an option for that? So we've paired up that one over here with that, and we've paired up this option, and it's D. Yeah, they're all quick today. They're quicker than I can write. All right, cool. Then, yeah, please do raise your hand if I'm going too fast, but I'm happy to move on based on what I'm seeing in the chat. Okay, here is something a little bit harder. So let's do this one. So you are given a triangular field. So the triangular field is shown in the diagram. I want to know, basically says the story is about a farmer and fencing is sold by the meter, and we have to work out what the length of the perimeter of this triangle is. So I am going to leave this to you to think about and to try, but this is a little bit, this requires a bit more thinking. So see how you guys can do, or if you get stuck, raise your hand, but I'm going to give you 2 minutes or so to try and get going with this question and see if you know how to apply the sine rule to help you do it.
Mr. Ism, Dogoza says that it's the Monday magic.
Okay, I hope it's like that every Monday. Okay, so think about, I want you to think about, in order to solve this question, you have one side, you need to find two sides. And what do you need to do to use the sine rule to find those two sides? Why don't you start by finding the first side you can by itself? And then go from there. Or if somebody has a strategy that could help us, why don't you raise your hand and tell us how you think we can do this? Where would you, maybe somebody has an idea of how we can do this. Would you be willing to share with us? Or if you'd like a hint, tell me in the chat, maybe, and I'll give you a hint. But I prefer if the hint came from the class. Maybe someone in the class can give us a hint. Find the length S or C. So the one hint that's come through from the class is to find this side over here first. I think that's a pretty good hint. Yeah. So why don't you try and find C first, and then see, maybe when you've got C, think about, can you then find this length down here? Maybe somebody else can give us a hint as well, but I like Loretta's hint is a good one. Anybody else want to give us a hint? So you're not, so you're not, Loretta, you're not finding the area, you're finding the perimeter. So you're trying to find out basically how much distance do you need to fence around the outside of this triangle. Now, I think Lorraine has given us a good tip by saying, what about finding angle A? So at some point, if you find angle A, maybe that would be helpful in finding out this side down here. So I think the class is giving good tips. Well, what are the hints so far? So the hints so far are that you should find the length of this side over here. And then a hint came in and said, why don't you find angle A? And what I'm thinking is, if you find angle A, so you can find this angle here, possibly then you'll be able to find the little a down here, or the side BC. That's what I'm thinking. Okay. But I want to see, I want to give some time, because this is like, we always try and add some questions that are harder for the standard class. And so this is the sort of question that is kind of taking it up a notch here. So to find C, I'm going to say that is equal to 300 over the sine of 27. And so in my next step, I should be able to get C by typing this into my calculator. But that still doesn't solve the question, because I don't just need the length of the one side, I need the length of the whole way around. So there's still more work to be done. But I will share with you what I get for the first bit. So at this point, I get 603.6770. Okay, so probably at this stage we could round off, but this is going to be 603.68 at this stage. Now, angle A to me is going to be 180 minus 27 minus 114. And so that should be 39. Oh, excuse me. So I must have clicked something. So if we know that's 39, what have we still got left to find? Oh, I see options are coming in here. So I think what you guys have done is you have then said, I'm going to work out what A is by going, where am I gonna, let me zoom out for a second. So I'll go down here. A divided by the sine of 39 is equal to 300 divided by the sine of 27. And so we get A is equal to 300 times the sine of 39 over the sine of 27. What do we get for A? So we should get 415.86. And so now, what is the final thing going to be? Well, is it enough to have this side and this side? It's actually not. I need to add the 300. So let's see what we get. If we add up 603.6770 plus 415.86 plus 300, we should get 1319.53. And so we're rounding, so we should get D. And so the final answer will be D. Wow, guys, if you got that right and you understood that, you really have begun to start mastering the application of the sine rule. So I wonder if there are any comments. How are you feeling about the sine rule so far? Are you feeling good? Thumbs up. Are you still feeling a bit confused? Let's see it in the chat. Or does anybody have a question about how we did that? I was pushing you there. There was, I was like at the end of the spin class there. Okay, so let us then, let us look to what's going to happen in the next lesson. So in this lesson, sir, could you use 300 meters to do the other two lengths? So David, you had to work out the missing angle A. If you needed to find that angle A, if you did that, then you could use the 300, but you always had to find that angle 39. Yeah. Okay, so what was I saying? I was saying that in this lesson, you learned about how to use the sine rule to find the sides of a triangle. Now, it turns out that in the next lesson, we are going to use the sine rule to find missing angles. And so the only difference that's really going to happen in the next lesson is when you are trying to find the, when you're using the sine rule and you're trying to find the sides, you always write the side on top. Okay, so for example, in this question, the A is a side, the 300 is a side. Now, in the next lesson, when you are focusing on finding the angles that are unknown in a triangle, you will see that we write the sine rule slightly differently, where we put the sine on top. And the other thing that's different is we're finding it for an angle, not a side, which has an additional step. But really, most of the hard work of understanding the sine rule has been done today. And so I just want to say, like, yeah, well done, guys, because you've kind of absorbed a whole new tool in just one short lesson.